Well, Armored Core 6 is out in the wilds, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the music, but also my impressions of the game so far. It's incredibly difficult, and I have to say that this game, wow. I played it for 3 hours the first night it came out, then I was like, absolutely not, I uninstalled the game, and yet that typical FromSoft sneaking, creeping feeling that I could maybe actually beat that boss if I kept trying was right there in the back of my mind all day yesterday. And so I re-downloaded it, got past that wall I was facing, and then, of course, inevitably hit another wall. But it doesn't really matter. I may not be able to finish this game, but what's really cool about Armored Core is that Armored Core is back. We're talking about it again. That's a huge deal. Armored Core first came out in Japan in 1997. And for the most part, this series was basically either dead or dormant since Armored Core Last Raven in August of 2005. So here we are. People are experiencing Armored Core for the first time. It's an amazing and interesting thing for me as a person who didn't really play the originals to now be able to have this game in our face. And I think that the world has certainly changed a lot since FromSoft was making Armored Core games. And obviously we've had the Soulsborne series that has, won them critical acclaim. And of course, Elden Ring, and now Armored Core is back. And we should really be celebrating that. So what I wanted to take a look at today is a little bit of the music. It's a really interesting soundscape for Armored Core. I don't think that it's music that works super duper well outside of context, if at all. There are a couple of tracks that I want to highlight today that will stand out, but in general, this game's music is the gnashing of metal upon metal. It is a interesting blend of ambient and song combinations, but generally this music is heavy ambient music, and even for the boss themes, there's not any particular track that stands out to me besides the one vocal track, I believe it's called Stargazer, that has vocals that are really front and center. Melody does not play a huge part of this game at all, and that thudding, powerful feeling of walking along or gliding along in this mech, in this dystopian, destroyed, metallic, mechanical world is full front and center. And it's really interesting from a musical perspective how these tracks, even without standard instruments, besides a couple that have like the piano in them, in general, these pieces are not very instrumental. They're all incredibly synthetic. And it makes sense given the fact that you are this, this lump of goo essentially in this AC. And I find that it works incredibly well, and it makes your heart pound. My heart yesterday while I was fighting, climbing the wall, as it were, my heart rate was in the 80s, where normally it would be in the 60s, just chilling. So the music is doing a great job of causing us a little bit of distress, and also allowing us to play into that, fantasy of being these gigantic, omnipresent mechs. Considering the fact that there are some mechs that we fight against that are even bigger than us. It's crazy. The Strider fight was absolutely insane in the first couple hours of this game. Anyway, let's take a look. My favorite track actually is the one I want to start with first, and that, of course, is Unbreakable. This is a fantastically rhythmic piece that I think really highlights the brutality and violence that we hear in this soundtrack. So let's take a listen. So even here, you feel this buildup, you feel this forward momentum, you feel that we're growing and we're swelling in volume, right? This is all ambient sort of stuff. There's no way I can say, oh, do you hear how the flutes are doing that and the clarinet's doing that? No. This is all inorganic, and I think it's really effective. Like that sounds quality to me is so visceral. It's very deeply rooted in the belly, and it makes you feel this insane sense of intensity. Bow, bow, bow. It's almost guttural how that makes us feel on edge or powerful. It almost awakens this sort of tribal dormant thing in us in a civilized society that is a little bit triggering in that it makes us want to really lean into the power fantasy of using our mech and our AC. But I also love just the way that it ascends and descends like that, like this undulating wave. It's very visceral. And the interesting thing to me too is that it's actually pretty subtle. Like this is it's the closest. It's one of the tracks in the OST that has that quality of an actual song rather than an ambient piece of music. But it still is incredibly ambient in the sense that it's oftentimes when we have battle themes, you hear this. There's one particular fight near the end of Act 1. The final mission of Act 1, where you're fighting another AC who's very, very, very good and efficient and can speak and is very volatile and violent and efficient. And it's interesting how a slow plodding rhythm actually does an incredible job of putting us on the edge of our seats, even though it's not fast. The stakes are high in the drama of the action, and this heavy sound quality, even though we're skirting around, dodging, pushing X, moving around, trying to survive, we're busy. But the music is slow, which is the antithesis of your typical battle theme, which is amped up and high. There's this real, very rooted in the body sound to that is really fun. And you hear how the strings in here cause tension and cause us to feel on the edge of our seat. And it's subtle because it's not forward and front and center. And that's the other thing about this soundtrack that's been really interesting to listen to is that we often get any melodic section or anything that's very light and gentle. We usually get it, think about a book. And the front and back cover is this heavy metallic sound quality. So the layering basically is like this. It's like a sandwich. And the top, the bread, is the mechanical sound, the synthetic sound. And then in between, that's where the layering exists with the piano and with the other instruments that pop in here for some of it, or even the vocals, because the vocals are not front. The vocals are not also part of the bread. They are part of the lettuce or the sandwich. And so it's a really interesting thing to listen to sonorally because it causes us to feel the heavy weight of that mechanical sound. And then we really have to lean in, if we so choose, to hear the sounds that are in between those bread pieces. This forward momentum is there. We're swelling again. That tension in those... You hear that tension right there? And then we go. Louder, 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 louder. Yeah, what a great track. So that's actually my favorite track in the soundtrack so far. There's another one that comes close second, which is Cries of Coral, which I haven't heard in-game, and honestly, I likely won't. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this game just due to its difficulty and due to the sheer amount of stuff that I'm working on and working through and all the different games that are coming out. But let's take a listen to this a little bit. I find this interesting because each one of these tracks tends to have a slow intro, and this one I appreciate because it has this wind element, and then it also has this, again, this metallic clanging quality, almost as if you're hearing like a marble fall down the stairs. And I think it's an interesting setup, especially in this track, which does have this direction that I feel it goes in. It's pretty cool. Let's keep listening. Do you hear how that it gives us the impression that things are not necessarily great, and it's a bleak sound quality, and that is something that this soundtrack does exceptionally well. I really don't think this is the type of soundtrack that I'm going to listen to in my spare time, just due to its inherent nature. That it really, I think the Armored Core 6 soundtrack really leans on the context of what's happening in game in order for you to really appreciate it and really let it sink into you. But this track is very interesting in that it has a direction. We have that slow build here. Do you feel how we're building up there and it's building to something? This is one of the closest songs to me that harkens back to Always Moving on the Surface. I believe that's from Armored Core 4 Answer. I think this is Armored Core 6's Always Moving on the Surface in a few different ways, but yeah. This track really feels like we're looking upon a broken world and we're looking out at the sunset and we're like having a reflective moment about what the meaning of life is and how this relates to us and how deeply intimate this conflict has become to us. It has an almost emotional quality that is leaning on pain and sadness and regret and wishing for things to be different. Just in this couple minutes of the way that we're building in the sonora column. Do you hear what I mean? Do you hear what I mean though? Because we have that sandwich of like dark synthetic electronic, and then in between, ba-da-bum, bum, ba-da-bum, bum, the piano, and then the vocals are there, but they're pulled back, and the metallic sound is actually pushed forward. So we're never losing sight of that feeling of being this machine that's capable of mass destruction, and yet there is still this sensation, especially in using the organic instruments of the piano and the voice to push forward that humanity, even though a lot of humanity is basically, all messed up in this world. It's really interesting to me from a musical perspective. Also note the mixed meter there. It's interesting because we're not really ever really grounded here. There's a bit of a tilting feeling that's always moving. I really like Cries of Coral. I really recommend you check that out. We're also going to be analyzing that on the channel more deeply as the months go on. Another track that I really found really interesting is Rough and Decent, which is actually weirdly a jazz tune. I want to check this out with you. We have a drum set. Still have that metallic quality in there. Electric guitar. You feel even there's also that off-kilter rhythm, and then it shifts again. It's really interesting. It's fun, but this is basically a jazz piece. It's crazy. You have a trio, the electric guitar, the piano, and the drum set, and that's this like. It's interesting how again. The sandwich is very apparent, and I wonder too if like some of this isn't like the consciousness of our merc, whoever we're playing as. The merc has this internal world that's existing, even though essentially it's a zombie and like, you know, there's no consciousness. There's a consciousness, but he's basically goo and piloting the ship. Anyway, I wonder though if that's not some of the. If the mech is represented by the metallic sound quality that we get in this sort of box in each of these pieces, then what if in the center that's the emotional state of this consciousness? It's a pretty interesting thought. I also vibe with that. Again, that's pain. The way that sounds anguished. That sounds painful. In between that, you have, again, this feeling of power and strength. I don't know when this plays, but man, it's a dope track. I'd like to hear this in context, actually. Love that. Yeah, that's such a vibe. That's an awesome track. I really, really, really dig that track. It's super cool. And then the last track I wanted to focus on was actually, of course, the trailer soundtrack. Fires of Rubicon is like what I think of is as a fantastic setup piece to basically give us the understanding of the context of the world and the location. I would connect it to an overture. In an opera to set the stage for the bleakness of this particular world. So let's check that out. Again, all these have this like slow build up. It's very heightens that tension, and you should definitely make note of that. Here we lead in with the drums. Slow. Still a minute in, and this is all part of the build-up. It's a 2-minute song. Just building. Building. And this mechanical sound is just fantastic. Setting us up for this sci-fi tech world. Love these drums. Here we go. Here we go. Love that. Caesura. what's nice about that is that I hate to stop there, but there's vocals in there again. It's so funny because we have that synthetic voice. It's so good. It's so satisfying. What an awesome track to elicit that feeling. And melodically speaking, you hear how there's just so many little interesting moments in this that really set it up. And I think that the Caesura, for instance, before we launch, we go 5, 4, 1. This is definitely one of the tracks in this soundtrack that has the most drive forward, and it's also the one that has an actual melody, which melody is the spice of life. It's what serves us, and it's great. It's great. Yeah. And again, the vocals are subdued. The vocals are in the background. So again, I wonder if this concept of like if the music is intended to be metallic and inorganic forward, and then the vocals are that consciousness of the Merc. It's possible. I'm going to save the Baltius fight for a proper breakdown, as well as some of the other tracks that we listen to even today, because they're just so fun to listen to and explore. So yeah, I'm really excited about Armored Core. It's great that it's back. It's a really important moment for those of us that have been around the series. Not me necessarily, but I certainly was alive when the series first came out. And I know that this is a return to form for FromSoft, and this is the truest essence of From Software in a lot of ways. And I'm thrilled that it's here. Will I finish this game? It's highly unlikely, but I hope you are enjoying it if you are. And as always, yeah, feel free to like, subscribe. There's more Armored Core, more FromSoft on the channel, and I'll see you later.